In this video, we'll talk about logging and the syslog utility. So you're familiar with, at this point, printf debugging. Probably use that for all your C development that you've done so far. And you know that print output is one of the simplest ways that you can use to troubleshoot and debug your application. And it really works great for interactive programs. But what about when you're working on a headless embedded system? What can you do for using the same kind of, what's a simple way that you could troubleshoot and debug in that case? So one of the things that you should think about in a headless embedded system is how to do logging. You need typically some way to store information in log files that you could go in and retrieve later, given that you don't have this interactive component of running an application like you would if you were just writing a standalone program. And there's several different logging frameworks out there, but one of the simplest and the one that we're going to cover in this course is Syslog and Syslog-D, or rsyslog-D. So this is really a daemon, which we'll talk about more later in the course, but it's basically an application that runs in the background that uses configuration to configure logging that is written to the file system. And typically you'll find those log files written in the var log directory. And there's a set of API calls for syslog that will automatically write the log messages you send to files in this directory based on some rules that you set up. So if you do man syslog, you can see more information about the usage of this utility, but it's really about splitting your log message into facilities and priorities. And so with your facilities, you can say, this is a user application, so this is maybe something that would run interactive. This is a daemon application, meaning something that's running in the background. Or you can have these local 0 to local 7, just your own defined facility that you use for your application to split up the type of log message. And then there's also a priority associated with the log message. So you can say there's an error warning, info, or debug. And then you can set different rules based on the priority to say, maybe you don't log it at all. Maybe you log it to a specific location. Maybe you display it on the terminal if it's an error message, for instance, rather than just logging it to a file. The usage of syslog is really simple. It's just you open log with the facility that I mentioned earlier. And then anytime you want to use it, you just use syslog, specify the logging level, and then just use exactly like you would with printf. And so for instance, this simple example that I'm showing here results in a message like this in var log syslog, where we're printing out the printf statement, but rather than going to the terminal, it's going to go to this log file. So in terms of how syslog is configured, it'll be a little different on every system, but for the Ubuntu application or Ubuntu OS or virtual machine that we're using for this course, it's going to happen based on rules that are located in etc rsyslog.d and then some message default.conf. So what we can see here is that the facility and log level, if it's not mentioned here specifically, so like the log user that we mentioned, because it's not mentioned here specifically, it's going to end up getting written into var log syslog.